Welcome to the I Love Coaching podcast, where we believe coaching solves everything.
Welcome back to the I Love Coaching podcast. So great to be back here with all of you again. Yes, we've relaunched this podcast, the podcast for coaches. That's what we're doing. We're going to build a coaching podcast that's specific for coaches and geared towards coaches. Who am I? That's fun. My name is Adam Roach. I've been your host of the I Love Coaching podcast for many years, and here we are again. We're going to blow this podcast up. I'm excited for this. So this podcast is an intro podcast. It's a re-intro podcast. It is me talking to you about who am I and what is the I Love Coaching community. So let's start this way. I want to take you back to, when was that? That was the summer, roughly. Spring of 2019. We're going to call it the beach chair moment because that's what we call in the I Love Coaching community, is the beach chair moment. And here's how the beach chair moment went. I had a coach. I had a mentor who passed, and he passed on, that would have been Easter 2019. Now, let me back up a little bit about this mentor, this coach. This mentor and my coach have been around in my life, my entire life. And this individual taught me many, many things, not only about life, taught me about sports, taught me about character, taught me about integrity, work ethic, you name it, this coach and mentor provided for me. And when this mentor passed, I felt like I had a gap, a hole, incomplete circle in my life. And so I came to Charleston, which is where I live. And I sat in the beach chair. That's what we call it, the beach chair moment. I sat there in that beach chair with a journal, with water, with sunscreen for my bald head, and music. And I sat there for 3 days of just contemplating what's next in life. And so when I sat there, I heard a few things. I'm a very spiritual guy. And you'll hear this throughout this podcast. You'll hear it through our community that I'm a big believer and I love to listen. And so here's what happened when I sat there in that beach chair moment. I heard two things. The first thing was who you surround yourself with matters. And at that moment in time, I realized that the people that I had bought into franchises with were not the people that I wanted to be in business with. That was number one. We're going to talk about that in a second. And number two, I had realized that the number that I heard was 100 million. Now, didn't quite understand what that meant at that moment in time, though the 100 million was something that I wrote down in the journal, along with who you surround yourself with matters. And so the beach chair moment continued, and as I finished my morning, as I finished my grieving, I got out of the beach chair and I started to take action. Now, let me pause the story for a second, because that beach chair moment was really important to me as it relates to the I Love Coaching community and this podcast. You see, that individual who passed was also my father. He had been an Olympic swim coach. I'd been his son clearly his entire life, and he was gone. He had passed. And it really put an interesting new trajectory into my life. You see, because I was raised an Indiana boy, a Hoosier, native Hoosier. My father's father and his father, so 4 generations before me of Roaches, were all farmers in Indiana. And my father was raised off the farm, but kind of on the farm. And then I was clearly raised off the farm in Indianapolis, Indiana. And so the work ethic that I understood from not only my father, but from my grandfather was hard work, right? Hard work, labor, hard work. And also you basically get to eat what you kill, both from a hunting standpoint and from a crop-based standpoint and selling-based standpoint. So after college, I went to Indiana University. I played tennis. I was a collegiate tennis player. I went off to Southern California, and I was playing what we called the pseudo pro tour. Why do we call it the pseudo pro tour? Because it really wasn't the pro tour. I mean, it was the pro tour, but it wasn't the pro tour. It's not like what you saw on TV. And I found out real quick that I was an American, not a European. I was getting my butt kicked every waking tournament and every waking moment. And so I was like, you know what? I do not lose well. So I'm going to get out of this vertical and get into a different vertical where I can win. And we got into the tennis business, and myself and two other guys, we owned the concession rights from the city of Beverly Hills. So what does that mean? Well, we had 38 tennis courts in the city of Beverly Hills. They were all public tennis courts, but they consigned them out to our company to run the camps, the leagues, the tournaments, the pro shops, the private lessons. And it was that moment in time that I had to learn how to be an attractor, a recruiter, a 1990s, well, this was early 2000s now, influencer. And so I went and recruited tennis pros from other clubs to come to our, what was called Beverly Hills Tennis. And so I did that successfully. And so from the year 2000 until nearly 2010, I ran that club. And we had a blast. I mean, it was an absolute blast. And so what I really learned through that process was, gosh, when you have a vision, when you have drive, when you have motivation to have success, all you have to go do is tell a bunch of people and recruit them into your organization, which is what we did. In the meantime, I also cut my teeth in real estate then. So I learned how to wholesale, I learned how to flip, and I learned what general brokerage was. And in 2000, when was that? 2009, 2008? No, it was a little before the recession, the Great Recession. I got into general brokerage with Keller Williams in Beverly Hills. One of my tennis business partners had moved his business from one brokerage to Keller Williams as a brokerage. And we read a book called the Millionaire Real Estate Agent Book. And he's like, hey, you want to build one of these organizations, a team? I was like, sure, let's do it. So stayed in the tennis business, got into the real estate business, was still flipping some homes at the time. And then I decided that the next opportunity for me was to own these franchises, run these types of franchises and companies and grow them. So that's when I transitioned to Charleston, South Carolina. Moved the family out east, southeast, just to have a change of pace. And we got here and I started running one of the Keller Williams franchises. It was in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina. And we took that company from about 123 agents. Now let's go back to my tennis recruiting days. And when I learned to attract and learned how to recruit, I took it from 123 agents in that office to nearly 400 agents in about 4.5 years. We took it from just right around $100,000 in profits to just under $1 million in profits in that same time frame. So I went from running them to owning them. And so I owned that franchise and with partners. And then I decided to go buy 2 other franchises here in the Southeast, and both of them in South Carolina. And on that day, April 2019, the beach chair moment, when my father passed, that's when I heard who you surrounded yourself with really matters. And it was at that moment in time that I realized that, the individuals that I was in business with, I didn't necessarily want to be in business with. I was the majority owner of all of these franchises, and I was the one making the decisions. And so the decision went like this: hey, either I'm going to buy you all out today or you're going to buy me out. And they all decided to buy me out, which was fantastic. So it was a real exit. So 3 real exits of the companies. And by the way, I had already exited Beverly Hills Tennis at the same time. So there's 4 successful exits. And at the same time that I was buying these franchises, I also started a software company. It was called Recruiting Bridge. And just like I had done in the tennis world, I also did in the real estate world, and that was recruit. So it just made sense to me to build a software company around it, and it was extremely successful. It was called Recruiting Bridge, and Recruiting Bridge approached, almost 80% saturation inside of Keller Williams franchise world. And it was so stinking cool. We had such a blast doing it from the year 2014 to about the year 2000. When was that? 2018, I believe we recruited about 70,000 agents into the Keller Williams organizations that we could track. Amazing, amazing, amazing. So exited the franchises in 2019, had already exited Beverly Hills Tennis, and I still had Recruiting Bridge running. So as I really thought back about what my father had done, the impact that he had, he was an Olympic swim coach. And so I got to reflect on all the lives that he had impacted when I got to speak at his funeral. So, it's to get deep here for a second, giving the eulogy at your father's funeral or a parent's funeral for that matter, it ain't easy, let me tell you. Though like I said, I'm a spiritual guy, and I do the best thinking. I don't know where y'all do your best thinking. I do my best thinking when I'm on an airplane. And I had thought about what I would say. And so I'm on an airplane. I don't remember where I was traveling to. And I'm preparing for this eulogy, preparing for this speak. And it came to me, and it was, what was the greatest lesson that I had learned from my father? And that was the title, if you will, of the talk that I gave, or the speech at his funeral. And it was really, really impactful. I pretty much had to memorize it so I could get through it without bawling my eyes out. Though, looking back at the impact that he had had on so many people, and now I'm in my beach share moment, and now I've exited my franchises, I thought, what do I want to do? And so I looked at my software users, and I thought, you know what I'm going to do? I was Keller Williams' number 3 recruiter in the entire company in 2016. I'm just going to go help these people that are using my software. I'm going to go coach them. I'm going to coach them for free. I'm going to lean into them because they're paying me a subscription every single month. So, well, let's just give them a little more added value. So I did. And at the same time, when I exited the franchises, I also exited a coaching company that was inside of Keller Williams called MAPS. And when I exited there were a few coaches that said, hey, listen, we want to come with you, or we want to do some things like old school Jerry Maguire, right? I've got the goldfish who's coming with me. But I didn't really do that. These coaches just knocked on my door and they basically said, hey, we want to coach with you. And I said, okay, I don't know really what you're going to be coaching. I can give you some leads because I'm generating some leads. And so I gave them some leads. And so 2019, the I Love Coaching company was born. Now, here's the neat part about that is, remember, there's still 100 million. I don't know what to do with the number 100 million. And so when I'm sitting around with these coaches, we're having conversations and we're all really loving what we're doing. We're impacting lives. And I said, guys, what are we going to do? We need to formalize this because we're making some money here and I can't mix these monies with other companies that I have. So let's create a company. I said, okay, great. And I said, well, I'm going to create this, but we got to come up with a name. And what do you all think? And one guy said, man, I really love what we're doing. Another guy said, I love this too. And I said, well, I love coaching. And so I said, there it is. We're going to call it the I Love Coaching Company. And that's how the I Love Coaching Company was born. And so we developed it. And that was 2019. And we have since grown it from that starting point of just a few coaches to now a global community of coaches. North America, Europe, New Zealand. We are literally scaling this company, this community. It is a company, though it is a community. I'm going to get to that in a second. And it was 2020 that it hit me about the 100 million. And the 100 million goes like this. It's on our vision statement. The I Love Coaching vision statement is to empower coaches to change and serve 100 million people through what we call our real coach method. And the real coaching method is not an arrogant term. We know that everyone's going to have their own unique coaching method, though at the end of the day, our real coach method is an acronym. REAL is an acronym that stands for relevant, experiential, authentic leader. And that's what we did. So we built the real coach method. We built the how to build a 6-figure coaching business by only working 5 hours a week, because some of these some of these coaches were only working 5 hours a week and they were making 6 figures. And I thought, well, let's just build a model around this. And so we went from more of a team approach to the I Love Coaching Company than to a brokerage approach, because that's kind of what I knew. I knew how to recruit. I knew how to build and bring value to people. And so I thought, let's just do the exact same thing here. And so we did. In 2021, 2022, that was the iteration of I Love Coaching. Everyone was an I Love Coaching coach. We had roughly 60 to 70 coaches on the roster, though not all of them were in production. And that really did not sit well with me. So I stopped that. And I said, listen, if you're going to be in our community, you gotta do well, right? You have to be coaching people. You can't just simply be in here for the country club aspect. And so that's when I started charging a monthly fee. And said, if you want to be part of the community, you got to be in here and you got to be having some skin in the game. So in 2023, fourth quarter, I changed it to a community membership model. And now here we are, we're approaching the third quarter of 2024. And we are a thriving community of coaches all across the globe now. So that's where the 100 million came from the beach chair moment, and then segued its way into I Love Coaching. So coming from, being in the environment of an Olympic swim coach my entire life, having him as a coach, having him as a mentor, and then ultimately his passing, ironically, his birthday was just last week, June 20th. He would have been 75 years old. And that was a really interesting feeling, knowing that my dad, my coach, my mentor, would have been 75 years old, and for him to know and see and feel the impact that we are having now on people all across the globe. Really, really cool. Now, I get to now lean into my own kids because I have two kids of my own. I have a soon-to-be 16-year-old in July and a soon-to-be 14-year-old in August, a boy and a girl, Addison and Amelia. And here's the neat part about what I've learned from my dad and my grandfather and now with my kids. Clearly, these kids are not living on a farm. We live in Charleston, South Carolina, so they are living at the beach. They are living in the water, if you will, and they are in a tennis academy. So it's kind of fascinating that my father, the Olympic swim coach, who had a great impact on me, though I took what I learned from him and built businesses, and what my kids have learned from me so far is the athletic side and the business side. Though they both go to a tennis academy, they both literally work, is what we call it. They go to work at the academy from 7 until 6 when it's school time, because they go to school there, and they also train basically 6 hours a day. And so the neat part about that is, they're getting to feel all of what my father taught me that I'm getting to teach them. And even though tennis was my background, my approach with them is to stay dad. I get to stay dad with them because they have many coaches around them. Though I do have a hard time not taking my coach hat off when I'm with them and just keeping my dad hat on. So I'm extremely thankful and grateful for what they are doing, how they're doing it in their tennis world. And so that this podcast right here is just an intro of who Adam Roach is and who the I Love Coaching community really is. So the I Love Coaching podcast now is going to be a coaching podcast that is specific for, just about anything related to growth and learning. It doesn't have to stay in the coaching lane. It doesn't have to stay in a specific models and framework or strategies. This is just going to be a learning-based educational podcast that you're going to learn and hear all kinds of things on. You're going to hear from me. You're going to hear from my guests. You're going to hear from, maybe I might have a co-host from time to time. The idea of the I Love Coaching podcast is to become a podcast of education that is known around the world. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to build the I Love Coaching podcast just like we are building the I Love Coaching community. I even think this might be something fun, that I might build a I Love Coaching podcast network and allow coaches to build their own podcasts with their own brand, their own unique title underneath that podcast network. How fun would that be? Big dreams, big ideas, big thoughts. Though that's what you're going to get from the I Love Coaching podcast is you're going to get Adam Roach. You're going to get Adam Roach and his guests and maybe an Adam Roach co-host and all types of learning conversations throughout this entire podcast. So welcome to the I Love Coaching podcast. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Talk to y'all soon. See you. Bye.